you everyone for joining us today. I am really excited to have this conversation with Penny. She is helping every designer to become a better freelancer, to make real money from what you already know how to do. Your skills, use it by doing website, graphic design, or any other type of design career you have. And I saw your answer, just told Penny about it, that you are really trying to understand how to communicate it clearly and how to really sell without being salesy. So this is our topic for today. I will welcome Penny and she will do the rest from now.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's always really nice that total strangers are like, you know what, I'm going to spend an hour with this person and hope that they can teach me something cool. So I really hope that you come away happy and inspired and excited about sales, which might seem crazy. So welcome. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about myself in case you have no idea who I am. I'm not famous, so that there's a good reason why you might not know me. I've been working in business development and sales for over 10 years. I've been working in self-employment for 6 years now, just a bit more than 6 years. I've had a whole bunch of clients and a whole bunch of trainees. I've worked with every kind of organization, so from really early stage startups to freelancers to corporates, the whole thing. And I've also worked up across a couple of different markets. If you're a designer, you might know some of the companies I've worked at as a business developer. So one of them is Us2. They designed the game Monument Valley, and they also did a whole bunch of other amazing work. And also AJ and Smart here in Berlin. They do design sprint stuff. So I've been in a design adjacent role for pretty much my whole BD and sales career. So I'm really happy to be with a whole bunch of designers today. I feel like this is kind of my happy place. My job, what I do these days is I do some business advisory and strategic coaching for CEOs. I also have Sales for Freelancers training, which might be interesting to you guys. It's a 4-week training program for freelancers, specifically for freelancers and very early stage agency owners. So there are very specific challenges that these two types of customer face when they're selling their products. And I've designed this program very, very specifically for those two types of customer that I have. I also provide one-on-one sales and advisory for a bunch of different people. So that's the website if you want to check it out. I just thought I'd throw that in there. I wouldn't be a good salesperson if I didn't plug my own thing. So I hope that appeals to you. Okay, so today we're going to learn how to sell without the cringe. I think we all understand all the horrible things that can go wrong when you're not confident in your sales skills. So I want to show you a bunch of things that I think are really going to help you really fast. I'm pretty sure that you can implement a bunch of this stuff tomorrow. So first of all, I want to talk about why we typically resist doing sales. Secondly, I want you to adopt 6 essential sales mindsets. Third, I'm going to show my method for how to sell yourself and show your value in micro stories. Yes, this is a term I made up. I didn't know how else to put it. So these little micro stories come with a bit of a framework that I'm going to share with you in a second. And finally, we can wrap that up and you can ask any questions that you might have. By the way, since you're all designers, I think you're probably going to cringe at my slides. I make them all in Miro and I put random emojis in them. I'm not even sorry about it. I have I have no time to make fancy slides. So I kind of find this is a nice, quick and easy way to do things. So let's get started. As Carla said, just pop any questions that you might have in the chat and I'll try and get to them all. Okay, why do we resist sales? I think you all know some of these factors. So basically, I think a lot of us have a real fear of sounding pushy or sleazy when we're pitching our services. There are a lot of sales techniques that people recommend. They're kind of old-fashioned and they're not really geared for freelancers. They're not really geared for the trusting relationship that you need to build with your client. So things like hard closes. You might have heard about this. So you might be on a call with a client and they say something like, okay, I need to think about it. And you say something like, what would it take for me to get you to sign the contract today? So that's what's called a hard close. It's kind of a ridiculous tactic. It's mostly for products and SaaS stuff and men, frankly. So if you're a woman, it doesn't come across very nicely. Manipulating your clients, giving fake pressure, saying, oh, there's only 10 more spots at this price. Everybody knows that this is kind of a lie. So you don't want to feel like you're tricking anyone. And sometimes it means you avoid really selling altogether. Secondly, I think a lot of the freelancers that I work with are super uncomfortable talking about money. Usually you're a designer or a web developer or a product manager, and so you're not really comfortable talking about finance stuff, which I really understand. I wasn't comfortable with that either when I began. So sometimes it can feel almost like embarrassing to say, hey, okay, my day rate is X amount of money, and that's just how it is, and I'm worth it. So a lot of discomfort around pricing exists. Next, it is really scary to put yourself out there, especially when you're self-employed. So if rejection happens, it can feel like a really personal judgment. And I get that. It's kind of like dating in that way. No matter how much you do or don't want the work or do or don't want the person that you're on a date with, it can feel really like ouchy when you're actually getting a no. So I think that's really common. And what I like to do is make sure that everybody knows that when you're speaking to someone who is a potential customer and has a challenge that you can solve, there are really great ways that I'll be showing you in a second to make sure that you reduce that rejection. And when you do get a client says to you, I don't want to work with you this time for whatever reason, you're like, you know what? I know why. And that's fine. It's just not a match. Now, this is a huge one. And even I sometimes am guilty of this sometimes. We all believe that if we do really great work and we try really hard and we do bring great outcomes, then people will naturally hear about it. And we hope for that as well. Of course, it would be so nice if we could just live on referrals forever. And a lot of us do get a lot of referrals, and that's awesome. But as they say, hope is not a strategy, and we want to make sure that you have a bit more structure around your sales approach so that you don't bury your head in the sand. You're actively taking control of your lead generation and your sales stuff. And I think this is the final one. I've been really suffering with this lately. I've been going all in on a couple of my services, and I'm like, if this doesn't work, I'm really going to have to decide what to do next. This is kind of the make or break point. So taking yourself really seriously is scary. And I just think it's so great to get a bit of structure around this stuff so that you can have a bit more of a calculated risk instead of just hoping that things will work out. Okay, here's one of my really ridiculous blurry emojis for all the designers to just, want to kill themselves. Okay, so here are 6 essentials to sales mindsets that I really want you to think about adopting. So first of all, forget the pressure to win the work. And I know this sounds extremely counterintuitive. However, if you're acting kind of like a spirit guide for your potential client and you're like, I'm going to take you by the hand, I'm going to guide you through my sales process, we're going to discover the challenge together. And if it's a match, then we'll work together. But don't get ahead of yourself and say, I have to win this no matter what. You're in service to the client, and whatever solution is right for them, they will discover that. I also think that I've had clients in the past, or prospective clients, where towards the end of the conversation, I was like, you know what? I don't think that us working together, this is not the right time. So potentially you need to do a little bit more work up front, or you need to maybe hire someone to help us with content. And I say to them, now is not the right time. But what I can recommend is, a freelance content writer or a marketer or someone who does webinars. And so I recommend them to someone that can help them. And those people, funnily enough, the ones that I don't work with, have often been some of my biggest referrers because I've been honest. I haven't taken the work that I couldn't execute successfully. And we had a really nice trusting journey along the way. So forget the pressure to win. You don't have to do that. And sometimes it's just too much pressure to in this sort of like tense process. Another thing I'm really passionate about is focusing on benefits and outcomes. So instead of saying, I'm going to run a workshop, I want you to think about what is the outcome of that workshop? What is the thing that clients actually getting? What is going to move them forward about that workshop? I think we've all seen those Instagram accounts where there's like a personal trainer and they've got all of their clients, and then you've got the before picture where you've got a person who's like, maybe their posture isn't that great. Maybe they look a bit exhausted. They're not looking super confident. And then you see the after picture and they're just like, and they're so, vitalized or revitalized. They're very vitalized. They're very energized. And what you're not seeing there is the sweat, the hours at the gym, the calorie restriction, maybe the sore muscles, the motivation, you're seeing the transformation. So at the end, and I think, UX research is a perfect example of this. When you do research, that is actually not the outcome. The thing at the end where you get all the insights and you get direction, that's the outcome to get your clients excited about. So just keep in mind the benefits and the outcomes instead of just processes and methods. Now, I think I like to make this statement. I'm hoping this is true of all of you, but I'm hoping that all of you here believe in yourself in some way, even if it's buried right underneath. And I think it's really important to think before every sales call, I am here for a reason. I am allowed to sell my services. And you know what? I don't even have to be the best. This is like a little bit of a weird thing to say, but being competent and passionate, that's enough. You do not have to be the world champion of whatever you're doing. You're allowed to be here. You're allowed to run your business and sell your services. And if it helps, I think it's good to write these things down prior to the call so that you're reminding yourself, yeah, I'm allowed. I give myself permission. And next, okay, this is a interesting one for me because I think there are very few people that actually get excited about sales. Usually it's like, something most people don't want to do. And typically my clients are not salespeople. They run businesses, they're designers, they're developers, they're, coaches, they run workshops. So me getting excited about the outcomes of what we're going to do, and also the fact that it's tangible and it's kind of fun, and actually sales is just building a relationship with someone, and it can be quite nice. And when I get emphatic about that and excited, people are just like, okay, maybe this isn't going to be so bad. So that excitement that you can show and that you can share is contagious, and it will really help you. And another thing I'll say about this is that often when we're experts in something, we focus too much on the challenge, how difficult it is, all the different ways we can solve it. That's good and fine and important, but focusing on more of the positive and exciting sort of things about the challenge, the opportunity as opposed to the challenge, is a great way to get clients to sign off. Now, I think a lot of freelancers, especially in the design space, have trouble with the kind of scope creep that can happen. So a client's like, oh, you're a UX designer. That means you can do my user interfaces, or you want to do research. Okay, that means you can make my full product roadmap. So make sure that you're aware of your own boundaries right at the beginning. You can enforce these, because if you're miserable on a project, you're not going to get the referral. They will pick up on that. So being energized and feeling empowered in a project is a great way to make sure that not only are you not doing things that you don't want to do, but you're not angry at the client, you're not feeling resentful. And at the end of the day, if you're not a user interface expert, then you shouldn't be doing that work. And so it's not good for the client either. And finally, the pricing question. What I see with a lot of freelancers is that maybe they're sort of pitching a project and they're like, you know what, this is going to cost 8,000 euros. And the client comes back and they're like, oh my gosh, we only have 2,000 euros for this project. That is not your problem. I'm sorry. If they don't have the budget to invest in their business and to solve their problems in a rigorous way, that's not your job to solve that problem. So what I would do if you have a big discrepancy in your different price points and their budget is work backwards from that and say, okay, listen, this is significantly less than how I work. My day rate is this, as you can see, this is how I've calculated my rates. But what I can do for that 2,000 euros is I can kick off with a workshop, maybe a bit of training, and then set you off on the right path. So you can come back to me when you've developed a bit of that budget. Does that make sense?
Totally does.
Okay, great. Thank you, Carla. I can't see everyone nodding in this webinar, but that's totally fine. I'm assuming people will push in and say, I don't understand, if they don't understand. Okay, this is my favorite part. I'd like to talk about micro stories. Now, this is not a technical term. I made it up maybe like a month ago. I was like, what's a really great way to sell things is making a tiny little case study. This is a great way to basically sprinkle your expertise and experience through every conversation. This can also, am I here? I just had a little connection. Okay, great. The scary thing about the internet sometimes. So we can also use these for networking chats. I love to use a lot of micro stories in my discovery calls because usually that's when you're really digging into the challenge and you can pick up on little, the clients kind of expressing a fear or a doubt. And that's when you're like, boom, I have a little solution for you. Not a solution, sorry, a micro story. And you can use these as pillars for your content or when you're giving a talk. In many ways, they can kind of form the foundation of how you talk about your business. So here's my 4-step framework. So how we're going to arrange these little stories. These can be so powerful and they don't need to run for more than a minute. So just a tiny little case study that you can drop into the conversation in a really relaxed way. And as you can see here, we're building trust and we're building excitement. We want our potential clients to come away and think, gosh, I really like and trust Carla, but also she said a few things that got me excited about how we're going to solve this challenge. So number 1, trigger. Number 2, confirm and explore. Number 3, situate. And did I say 4? Anyway, the last one, approach or solution. And please note that I said approach or solution. You can either kind of talk about a fully fledged final outcome that you helped a client to get, or you can talk about an approach that you use. So number 1, our trigger. So this is when a potential client has identified a problem with their business. These problems almost always have themes. So as a salesperson, the themes that I cover are we want to attract more clients. We don't know how to sell. We don't know how to share our pricing. We don't know how to tell our story. These kind of topic areas. So when you hear a client talking about something, they often will tell a bit of a story and not say directly, we're having problems with client acquisition. So I want you to get used to hearing these little triggers and think to yourself, okay, this is my opportunity. So these can also, as I said, they can be the foundation of a lot of different parts of your business. Trigger, number 1. I'm going to give you examples, by the way. Now, next we're going to confirm and explore because it's really important to play it back to the client so that they can say, yes, you're on track. I feel heard, right? So there's nothing more important than letting your clients know you're listening carefully, you're actively listening. One exercise I love to do, actually, I shouldn't tell you about that because it's a spoiler for Sales for Freelancers. So I'm not going to tell you. It's always a really fun one at the beginning of the course. So we're going to play it back to them, and then we're going to dig deeper for more clues and insights. This is where we can uncover the nature of the challenge. Next, we will situate. So I want you to talk about your experience in this space, and I want the client to imagine themselves as your client, as your paying client. So here's a real example that from when I was doing a consulting project last year. I had this wonderful woman that I was working for. She ran a collection or a cooperative of coaches, leadership coaches. They were running really like high quality webinars this is week. They were doing it every week, which is crazy. I don't know how they did that. Webinars are so much work, as Carla definitely knows. But her target audience, which were C-suite, executive, head honcho types, were not signing up, and the sessions were not resulting in qualified leads. So she was getting a whole bunch of attendees who were really curious, maybe first-time leaders, maybe mid-tier professionals in big organizations, but not the people that she wanted to reach. So I start the story with that. This is where my verbal part of the micro story happens. The other parts are happening up here, and this is where you start to speak. So you say, I had a client once, she was running great webinars, but she wasn't getting the results she wanted. That helps our client to imagine themselves as our client. Then we're going to talk about the solution or the approach that you're going to offer. So this is where you say what we did to solve this, how we approached this, and you talk about the cool thing that you did in order to solve the problem. It's a great place to tell the customer why you think this approach is a perfect option for them or a great option. It literally does not have to be the solution. It can just be a sort of approach. It can be an avenue to explore. And don't forget to give some concrete examples for where this has worked for you in the past. One little thing I want to draw attention to is you really don't have to promise anything. You don't have to go into your sales calls and say, I can definitely solve your problems. Everything works 100% of the time. People won't believe you anyway. Nobody's a perfect operator. So it's really nice to be honest and transparent and suggest instead of trying to hammer everything home. Okay, here's what this looks like. So we've got our trigger, we're running webinars. We've got our confirm and explore. It sounds like you'd like to get a few more leads in the pipeline. Is that right? So you're playing it back to them and you're making sure that you're on the right track. Can you tell me more about that? So this is when they say, okay, so we love running the webinars. We love connecting with our community. We love making the content. However, it's a waste of time at this point. And then you can start telling your story. Okay, I had my client, she ran webinars every month, it wasn't working out. Sorry, I'm going to have to just move this little thing. And so what I often do, funnily enough, the strange thing that I used to do in this situation was I'd run customer interviews. I was like, okay, we don't understand what is going to attract our client at the moment. And this is something I recommend for all of you, actually, if you're struggling to figure out how to reach your client, just jump on a couple of calls with past clients, current clients, clients that you didn't actually end up landing, and spend half an hour saying to them, okay, where do you learn new things? How do you find new contractors? What is it that you're looking for? Do you use LinkedIn? Do you go to conferences? Do you use TikTok? Do you read books? Do you listen to podcasts? Get to know them. And I'm sure as some of you know, if you interview 5 people, you've got 80% of insights right there. So 5 customer interviews, it just takes you a couple of hours. And you should have a really clear direction around how to reach that customer and how to generate more leads in an effective way and generate more conversations and provide value to them. And if you have hesitations around this, I cannot express to you, I've done probably 60 of these interviews for clients. People love talking about themselves, which is lovely. It's great. So even the most senior people, even CEOs, even founders that have no time, they will get on the call with you because they want to talk, they want to express, they want to share their challenges. And it's a really great bonding experience. So what I did for this client with the fantastic webinars, I ran a bunch of interviews and we found out some really important information. One second. Talking a lot is very thirsty work. So we found out some really important information, and that is all of these C-suite potential clients that we were talking to said directly to me, I never open emails and attend webinars. I never open emails that I don't have to respond to, and I do not have time for webinars. And I'm like, okay, cool. So what overall, not just in your, if you're looking for a leadership coach, so forget the leadership coach, but what would be of value to you in your work life? And all of them, again, said the exact same thing. I get new information from my peers, my trusted colleagues, and I would love to grow my network. And I'm like, awesome, we're going to do an experiment. So I got my client to basically run a dinner, no agenda, no slides, 10 people. It was her and her co-founder, 4 current clients, 4 potential new clients. They sat around, they connected. Some of the current clients kind of recommended my client. Sorry, the word client pops up a lot in this speech. Some of that, they kind of cross-pollinated. And like, it was actually great for me because I was like, I've never recommended this before, but my client got a couple of new leads out of it. And it was just so easy, so simple. She doesn't have to do it every week. She now runs these every quarter, and she has a bit of a waiting list around it. Like, people are really excited to come along. So sometimes the solution doesn't look like what you think it will. Anyway, I'm kind of getting sidetracked. So that's the solution. That was the approach. I'm not saying to them, here is exactly how you're going to get new leads. You're going to do a content strategy. You're going to post on LinkedIn all the time and make sure you get more leads for your webinar and more audience in there. I was like, let's wipe the floor clean. Let's talk to your customers and find out how we can help them and make ourselves the focal point of their community. Whoops, I need to click through now. Okay, so I just want to give you a couple of little talking points for your micro story so you can frame these in a way that subtly drums in the fact that you've been here before, you understand their challenge, maybe you have expertise in a particular industry, without saying, I have expertise in a particular industry. So you can say something like, listen, and this is a great one for designers. All my design agency clients, I always used to say, listen, I've worked with a couple of design agency clients now. And what I find with all of them is that they are huge perfectionists. So they really struggle to get things out there without working so hard on them and getting every pixel perfect and making sure it's literally perfect. This is a design thing, right? People who work in this field want things to be beautiful and correct and full of value. So when I say that, I often get people saying, yeah, I feel that. I'm a designer and I really, I sometimes struggle to ship things basically, especially for marketing purposes. Another way that you can phrase things is something I usually like to do is, so for example, I gave you a perfect example just then. What I usually like to do when I kick off consulting projects is run 5 customer interviews. It's the perfect kickoff point. It gives us so much information, it accelerates the process, and it's easy and fast and very rewarding. You can also say something like, what I see all the time is, it's very similar to, for example, my Sales for Freelancers trainees. What I see all the time with them is actually just a huge amount of insecurity around their right to be freelance, which is really interesting. So a big part of my work in that space is making sure that they have not just the mindsets, but the actual tools to approach their work with a lot of confidence. So if you want to screenshot this page, and sometimes it's good to just scribble down a couple of things that come to mind, just to get in the habit of framing your micro stories in a way that lands. Okay, so it's really that simple. We've got 4 steps. We've got trigger. So this is where you are identifying a problem that you can solve. You confirm and explore. So this is where you play it back to them and make sure that you are digging deep for more answers and more insights. You situate so that the client can imagine themselves as your client. And then you propose an approach or a solution. And you don't even have to propose this. I do need to emphasize this. This can be quite an early stage conversation that you're having. So just giving the client an idea of how you've solved certain problems before can really help them think, okay, now I have hope for this challenge. Because often clients come to us when they're at their wits' end. They're like, I have seriously worked so hard on this and I cannot get it right. And I feel like it's hopeless. And this is where you fly in with your superhero cape and you're like, I am your trusted advisor. I'm your spirit guide. I love that phrase. I imagine us as like little angels walking through the forest, holding the hand of our potential client. So I have some solutions, some approaches that we can try together that have worked for me in the past. Okay, I really got through. I'm so proud of myself. I feel like I talked really fast, but here's where I'd like to wrap up. So please remember that it's so important to get yourself into the right mindset prior to your sales conversations. Just take a minute to center, to write down a couple of little things that you are excited about on your journey. And also a big thing that I always recommend is make a little desktop, a folder on your desktop. It's called the Smile file. I want you to fill it with screenshots of testimonials and nice things people have said about you and some of your best work, so that if you're like, I don't deserve to be here, I'm no good, you can click that open and be like, that's right. My old boss said that I was a visionary creative. Just remind yourself that if you've done it before, you can do it again. Now, the next is start to get used to looking out for triggers. This can happen across your entire career, and use these as the foundation of your communications and your sales and your offering. And then finally, use your micro stories to sell without having to do that aggressive kind of selling. And finally, I've got I hope you don't mind me doing this, Carla. Okay, great. Great, thank you. If you'd like to join my Sales for Freelancers cohort in October, I have a little discount for you. Normally tickets are 670 euros. I'll give them to you for 600 euros. You can just email me at penny@company.studio. I'm in the midst of changing my email around, so please ignore the company.studio bit, but that's where you can reach me. Okay, thank you so much. Please, I see a whole bunch of things in the chat, but if you have questions, I'd love to hear them. I am seeing here that Louise is saying that for him, it's really hard to charge or promote your work. I think it has to do with insecurity. For sure. And you know what? It depends on what stage of your journey you're at. So if you are truly like terrified to put up a big day rate and ask for a big day rate, take it to the point where you're comfortable, but a little bit uncomfortable, where you're like, okay, this is reasonable. I'm a little uncomfortable. So maybe if it's, let's say like 650 euros a day, you might be comfortable at 600, just push it up a tiny bit. And then for every new client, you can take it up a tiny bit more. And what you'll see is people who, when they sign off really fast, that means you're probably charging a little bit too little. So you should have a tiny bit of pushback, a tiny bit of hesitation, but that's where you start to hit the sweet spot. Does that make just started? Yeah. So this is the thing I really am passionate about, making sure when you're starting freelancing, get the work in the door. Don't let opportunities slip. This is where you're going to start to learn all about your clients, about how to execute projects really well. You'll get referrals from these happy clients that you've taken on. So make sure you get the work, and then you can start bumping up your prices. I think that's a much more sustainable way of building your business.
I really love that. And I think, trust in yourself, of course, comes with a need and a price, right? Because when you are starting, that's really tough. So what kind of advice would you give to designers like, Agnes and Gabby just told us like at the start of this, that they are starting their own business, starting their freelance. So maybe you did not get yet that first customer to get a little bit more confidence. So what tip would you give to someone in that stage?
Oh, that's a great question. So what will be your greatest tool when it comes to customer acquisition is your network. As I said before, I've probably interviewed about 60 potential clients of my clients. And what they always say is, we really don't hire anyone without a referral. Now, that might sound absolutely hopeless, but the great thing is you can get referrals from people you've never met. I've got referrals from someone who's been following me on LinkedIn for a long time. So what I really recommend is making sure that you potentially go back to previous employers, let them know you're freelance now, and start to get in the habit, because they're the lowest hanging fruit in terms of how comfortable you are in the networking process. So what you're trying to do is get comfortable networking. I'm a big passionate believer in the fact that if you're just one person running a business, you don't have to go and reach 100 people. It's about building quality relationships, sometimes one-on-one. You don't have to go to the events and hold like the soggy pizza and trying to do icebreakers with total strangers. You're allowed to actually reach out to people one-on-one, tell them what you're doing, and then try and remind your network that you're there and what you're doing. So that LinkedIn's a great place to do that. Just popping up, making sure that everyone's like, yeah, Agnes, that's right. I remember her. This is what she stands for. This is what she's doing. I'm going to keep that in mind. So that's my first tip. Build a really strong network, and it doesn't have to be thousands. It can be 10 people. And actually, while I'm here, I would say also that some of my best referrals have come from my peers that are non-competing. So people like workshop facilitators, people like designers, people like, actually, I've got a lot of designers in my network. So a lot of my referrals came through these people who are like, I'm already working with this client and now they're looking for a sales strategist. So getting together a nice little network of non-competing peers and becoming part of little communities is such a great launch pad.
I love that. I love that. Karina asked you here, in the beginning, you mentioned that hard closes are more of a men's sales technique. What difference do you see between males and females when it comes to sales strategy, specifically in design?
I mean, I think, and this is a huge generalization, but a lot of men tend to be a bit more confident, trying things out there at a little bit more aggressive. And to be honest, I've found that clients don't necessarily always appreciate really aggressive, hard closing sales techniques from women. They're looking for a more relational approach as opposed to a transactional approach. This is just according to my own experience. I could be completely wrong, but what I've seen is people would like to deal with different genders in slightly different ways. And you can get away with stuff when you're a guy that I just don't think you can get away with when you're a girl. So when I started my BD career, I was like, okay, I need to learn about sales. I've never done this before. And so I started listening to all the podcasts and reading all the books, and they were all by guys and they were all from Silicon Valley. And they said things like, it was quite funny. There was one technique where you have a conversation with the customer and you say, okay, wait, what is it? They give you like a little bit of a yes, and then you just slide the contract already over the table. So you prepare the contract prior to even your first meeting, and then you just slide it over the table and you're like, right, I've got a contract ready for you right here. And I can assure you that is a fantastic way to lose trust and respect. People will absolutely hate that. I don't know where it works. Like that kind of boggles my mind. Another one is, oh, nuts, I just forgot my train of thought. Okay, but yeah, there's a whole bunch of these different things that just simply, and I don't think a lot of people are comfortable with them. So yeah, that's what I would say about that.
Arena asks still, like, in the micro story section, you mentioned how we should lean on previous experience while framing our service for customers. Do you have any tips about framing service without past experience in a particular situation? For example, I would like to branch out. How should I talk to my first client in the new area of interest? So, maybe moving areas, going from one design area to another, or even changing job role.
This is a really great question. And I want to take it back to why you made the decision to switch or branch out or move into a new space. There has to be a kernel of something that you have experienced. So while it might not be client work, you can actually lean on experiences that you've been adjacent to. So an example of that is I have worked in agency environments where I was working with some really highly skilled designers and developers and product people. And I was able to draw on that experience to sell certain parts of my work. For example, I've been booked for workshops many times over the years. I don't know how to run a workshop, but I've seen other people run it. I've seen what they do. I've seen how they approach it. And so I've just kind of taught myself. And so something I would say in my early career, I actually told my very first client was someone said, will you come and run a design sprint? And I was like, I mean, I'm a business development person, right? I've never run a design sprint in my life. And this client was like, but how many have you been in? And I was like, 20. So it's really critical to just believe that you are allowed to draw on experience that you didn't necessarily directly do, because that's what learning is. We're all teaching ourselves pretty much all the time, and that's completely okay.
Yesterday I was talking about something like this. Someone asked, should I actually get a project from a customer that I'm not super sure I can deliver the whole thing? And I'm like, well, what's your goal, right? Do you learn to learn that thing? And then give the customer that one project. Do you want someone to help you learn? Then you maybe even give the whole budget of the project to learn that one thing, and later on you be more authentic. Or you can just hire someone else, and if they don't deliver, your name's on. And that's the problem, right? Like when your name is there at stake, it's kind of problematic.
Absolutely. I will say one more thing about that, and that is I used to be a careers coach at a company called General Assembly, which is a UX design and web development bootcamp. My whole job was to help the students get jobs at the end. And what I always said is, if you're looking at a job description and you see things on there that you don't know how to do, just ask yourself, can I learn this? If it's Photoshop, you can probably learn it, right? If it's Figma, if it's, trying to think of someone, this was 10 years ago, so Sketch, is it Sketch? One of the more old school prototyping tools. You can probably learn that on the job. However, if there is a huge skills gap where it's like you have to manage a team and you've never done that before and you don't feel comfortable learning on the job because the stakes are too high, then that's where you have to be kind of like a bit honest with yourself and with the client and just say, I don't know how to do that. If you're willing to support me on it, great. If you're not, great as well.
Gabi also asks here, like, what are your thoughts on using Trustpilot? Unlike Google, it travels with you. If you were to move locations, your business lose the ratings apparently. So probably she was using Google Maps before and then moved the places. I always felt you could change just the address of it. That's what I did with my own business, but yeah.
Okay, so this is a perfect example of what I was just talking about. I honestly have no idea. I've never used Trustpilot. I apologize, but I think you're often, I guess it depends on what you're offering and what kind of client that you're after. So some clients live in different places. I assume Trustpilot is like a service where people can look up. So this is a great place to go back to what I said before about customer interviews, and you can just ask them. You can say, do you ever look on Trustpilot? How important is that to you? One thing that I actually have been freelance for 6 years, and I've had a website for like 9 months out of those 6 years. So I might have lost a lot of work through that, which is a shame. But now I know that clients sort of get recommended to me and they come through, they have a quick look at my LinkedIn, and then they have a quick look at my website. So when I heard that from one of my potential clients, I was like, okay, I really need to get a website up. This is terribly unprofessional of me. So just asking your clients firsthand, you can even put something on LinkedIn and say, hey, are you this type of person, whoever's hiring you, Gabby? And can I ask, do you use Trustpilot? You can DM me, you can click the little poll.
True. Using polls on LinkedIn, it's quite helpful to
Yeah,
understand what the people who follow you already, why they are there,
yeah,
how you can help them
absolutely.
if they are looking for help or so
Yeah.
on, right? And that's the
And
way also to expand the network itself. Like, so
mhm.
if you want to do freelance business for people that are doing, I don't know, travel agencies, you might just go after people that are working on travel agencies, follow them, interact with them, read their posts,
Oh
and
yeah.
then get notes by them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just LinkedIn it's a bit tough at the moment. I think they're switching their business model as a little bit, and you can read about that in various different places. However, it is a nice place to say, okay, this is where the professional community lives. So I might as well try and have a bit of a presence there. I would recommend that.
I am a designer, right? And
Mhm.
let's say I have been freelancing for a while, or I want to start freelancing. For who exactly is your course for? Is it for people that didn't start yet, or is it for people that have started already and are trying to figure it out?
That's a great question. Thank you. So, if you are right at the beginning of your freelance journey and you don't know what your offering is yet, I would say give the world a try, jump into the water, and then come in 6 months when you have a bit of context. Because I find it's all kind of just theory until you understand that the world that you're living in or that you're working in. You can be from literally any profession. We have a whole bunch of really diverse trainees in the group. If you own a small agency, less than sort of 10 people, or you're starting out there, it's also really helpful. So the course is designed for people who want to sell services. Yeah, I hope that works. I'm going to just drop my LinkedIn profile in here, and I encourage you all to do the same, so that you can connect with each other if you want to, if you're not connected already, because that is the first step to doing a bit of networking. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Carla. Bye-bye.
Thank you all for joining me today, this UX UI Hub Meet. And I'm really happy to have you here next week too. Check it out, what's coming up.